In regard to belief in God, this is the second lecture, and these two lectures put together uh, are based on 10 points. I've already discussed five of them, and I'll discuss five more of them today. Uh, the first thing I mentioned was a clarification about the name of God. Allah is in Arabic, God is in English, Khuda and Allah in Urdu, and so on. So let's not you know unnecessarily talk about these things which are non-issues. Number two, the sources of learning of humans are intuition, experience, divine revelation, and intellect. Number three, I mentioned that humans know God intuitively, and I mentioned the reason why they know it, as mentioned in the Quran. Number four, human experience also has given us an evidence of the presence of God because of what the Quran tells us, the experience which our great ancestors, Adam and Eve, had with God directly, and their experiences were passed on by their progeny to the subsequent generations. And that is why God, Allah, etc., is a household name. And number five, I mentioned that human intellect is able to discover through the information data that we have within ourselves and in the outside world. And when we use our intellect properly, we see that there is, in the world that we are living in, control, discipline. There is what I call providence in this world. We are being provided. There is mercy in this world. We are getting things which we like and love, but we never deserve them. And there is wisdom in this world. That is, things are happening in a way that they have been planned. You can see wise planning in what's happening in the world that we are a part of. All these put together, they give us a reason to believe that we need to understand why it's happening. And the answer is that it's God who is causing it to happen. And if you don't believe in Him, you'll be you'll be in a puzzle. You'll be not be able to solve the puzzle. You'll be confused. You'll be in the darkness of ignorance. And as soon as you understand God properly, then the Quran says, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. God, belief in God is in reality the light of the heavens and the earth. That is, you are able to see the light of God's belief and explain everything. Now I come to the sixth point. The sixth point is, okay, we accept God, but we need to be in touch with God. We need to contact Him. If God is there, then He has to be the most important being for us. But is it not a disadvantage that you can't even see Him? We can't even meet Him. So, how do we get in touch with Him? Well, number one, the Quran tells us that it's not possible for us to see Him. Uh, it is mentioned in the Quran in verse 143 of Surah Al-Araf, wherein God tells us that Musa alayhi salam, when he gained this confidence that he was able to speak to the Almighty, and it seems that he spoke to God literally. I can't explain it, but that is what the Quran says. وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. When he spoke to him, he became confident, and he said, "Now I want to see you, God." I don't blame him. I mean, obviously, he thought that after the first success, let me go for the second one. And God said categorically, "You can't see me. Look at that mountain if you really want to have an idea of why you can't see me." And when he looked at the young mountain, and the Almighty, by putting some kind of a reflection of His presence on the mountain, it just perished into pieces. Uh, and Moses, he fell unconscious. He could not bear that experience. And when he got up, he regained consciousness. He said, "Ana awwalul mu'minin." I'm the first to believe in the fact that God cannot be seen. The second problem in understanding God in the way we understand other things. For instance, imagine that there weren't any photographs, any pictures, none of them. Or maybe go back 3 centuries, in the uh, previous earlier generations. And if somebody was to tell uh, his son or daughter that, your grandfather looked like your uncle. So, they have the same features. They're very similar. So some idea could be formed about somebody that the person had not seen before. In the case of God, that too is not possible. Because the Quran tells us in Surah Shura, Surah number 42, verse 11, Laisa kamisli shayo. There is nobody similar to him. So, you can't even give the example of somebody uh, in the existing world to show that, that's the way God looks. So that also is ruled out. So how do we know then? How do we know him? How do we appreciate him? The Quran tells us that our ability to appreciate God has to be through proper understanding of his attributes. And the Quran describes his attributes. The Quran mentions, for example, in Surah Al-Hashr, Surah number 59, verse 24, Lahul Asma'ul Husna, all good names belong to him. In other words, he has all the good attributes. He's powerful, he's knowledgeable, he's wise, he's merciful, he sees, he hears, he responds, and so on. Now, regarding the attributes of God, there are at least three clarifications which are important to understand. Uh, one clarification about his attributes is, as I mentioned earlier, all good attributes belong to him. Imagine a good attribute, and it's there in God. He's fair and just, he's merciful, he's wise, he's knowledgeable, etc. The second thing is that many of the attributes that we can think of to be there in God are also shared by humans. I mean, obviously, humans are also somewhat powerful, they are somewhat wise, and so on. But the difference is that all attributes of God are complete, infinite, endless, whereas we humans, all our attributes are limited. They have uh, some uh, domain within which you can imagine them to operate. And this fact is borne out by the reality that in all the attributes that the Almighty has described about himself in the Quran, it is preceded by a conjunction al, alif lam. So whereas anybody could be an alim, qadir, but God is al alim, al qadir, the knowledgeable, the one whose knowledge is complete and perfect, and the mighty, the powerful, completely powerful. The third aspect of the Almighty's attributes that we must appreciate is that all his attributes, all of them are simultaneously functioning, which really means that it's not that sometimes he is fair and just, and on other occasions he is merciful, and on some occasions he is powerful, and on some other occasions he is wise. No, he is all of them together. Something that we humans probably may not be fully able to fathom and digest. But we can have an idea of, okay, you know, if he's God, then all of this has to be a part of his existence. So just to give you an example, I'll give you two examples briefly, which will help understand that these simultaneous uh, existence of attributes of the Almighty. They explain some puzzling realities or some questions that quite often puzzle us. One is you know, the famous understanding of predestination, taqdeer, and free will. So people quite often wonder how is it possible that everything is predetermined and yet we are freely operating. The fact of the matter is that it's true. Both are simultaneously happening. Why? Because God is completely knowledgeable. So if his knowledge is perfect and complete, he ought to know everything. What is there in the past, what happened in the past, what's happening right now, and what's going to happen in the future. My tiny intellect, small intellect, is not even able to appreciate this statement when somebody makes this statement that for God, past, present, and future are all the same. And I say, okay, I see. I don't get it. But the fact of the matter is that he knows everything. However, while he is completely knowledgeable, he is completely just as well. So if he has put us in a trial, in a test, he will not hold us accountable for anything that we did not do on our own volition. We were forced to do. So while he knows beforehand what I'm going to do, he also knows that what I'm going to do, I'll do it freely. I'll not be forced because of the foreknowledge of the Almighty. How is it possible? Well, it's possible. If you will ask me, I'll give you the reason, but I think let's keep it there. That his uh, attributes are all perfect and they are simultaneously functioning. The other thing is that there are many people who say that God is merciful. So no matter what we do, the topic that we were discussing in the earlier part of the earlier segment of this presentation, God is merciful. I'm just going to forgive him. Why would he bother about punishing people for things that they did? He's so merciful that he's just going to be ignored. Uh, there are some others who say that because we have done so much of wrong and he's just and fair, we have got no hope. So, what is the right understanding? The right understanding is that he is merciful and he's just. And there are two things that we need to understand. In order for him to be merciful, he has allowed, open the door for, as we discussed earlier, repentance. So you seek forgiveness from him, and he's going to forgive you. That is his mercy. He is just, and him being just, it demands that all humans will be treated in the same way, or shall I say, they'll all be dealt with according to the principles of justice in, you know, complete application of those principles. So how will he then be merciful? Well, the answer to it is that for God to be just, he has to have, as I said earlier, a threshold, a minimum, say, passing marks, which will apply to all. And as I clarified, uh, based on each person's capacity. But that minimum acceptable performance would have been very high. But because he's merciful, he's going to lower the threshold. So what I'm trying to say is, that, when you understand God through this presentation of his attributes, and you appreciate that they are all perfect and they're all simultaneously functional, you'll be able to understand many of the difficulties that the people have in mind while believing in God on one hand and the life hereafter on the other, and looking at some of the puzzling questions that they have in their minds. I think I'll just take one more point because there are two other points that I'll still leave for discussion uh, in the next session. What are the alternatives? What are the alternatives if one does not believe in God? Uh, Honestly, there are only two alternatives because, this world is a reality. This reality needs to be explained. If belief in God doesn't explain this reality, then there has to be an alternative explanation. So, what are those alternatives? One alternative is polytheism, shirk. There's not one God, but there are many gods. The fact of the matter is that when we look at the history of religions in general and the explanation of the Quran regarding the beliefs of the polytheists of Mecca and the surroundings, it seems that they believed in one big God who was the creator. He is also the sustainer. But according to this understanding that they have, which is degenerated understanding of belief in one God, they started coming up with the idea that the one big God then decided that he's going to decentralize and allow some of his smaller companions, probably his favorite angels or jinns or humans, to share in his sovereignty and in the manner he's ruling. So people started then focusing on those smaller deities, gods, to get their things, their needs come to them through them. Some people thought that because God is so great, he's so distanced, like a big king, it's not possible to approach him directly. It's not accessible. So we need to have some others, like in the case of worldly kings, um, roots, some other connections to get into contact with him. What I'm trying to say is that polytheism is actually the result of not understanding or not receiving the message of the right message of one God. It's a degenerated form of belief in one God, which the Quran keeps mentioning as baseless. It has got no intellectual basis, A, and it has got no textual basis, B. It's either human intellect that should endorse this understanding, and it doesn't, or there should be a text of the Almighty Himself declaring that that's what I've decided, that I have actually announced the appointment of Lat, Uzza, Manat, and all these other saints who are also sharing some part of my uh, you know, administration, like the ministers, the cabinet members do. So that's actually unity of God uh, not understood properly or degenerated deliberately. The other possible answer to this existence is not polytheism but atheism. Now, atheism is belief in no God. There's no God. Uh, this understanding of atheism, in turn, has two different explanations. Well, has many explanations, but two of them are better known. One of them was a slightly older explanation, which was explained through the understanding of agnosticism. The idea was that it's not possible to come to a proper, clear understanding of the first cause. So, why to waste our time and energies on trying to find out something which is not possible to be found out? So, that gave rise to then skepticism. People started asking questions, how is it possible, and so on. Uh, but in recent times, because of the advancement in science, knowledge of science, and particularly the theoretical aspects of science, uh, people have come up with another alternative. And that is the understanding that there is no God based on two, particularly two theories. When I say scientific theory, what I mean is that there are certain facts which are scientific facts. which cannot be denied. For instance, you know, there is gravity, it's a reality, and so on, atom and the composition of molecules, etc. So many realities that can actually be shown through experiments in labs. But when you talk about a theory, it's just extension of your imagination based on certain observations and some intelligent uh, extension of we already know, but it's imagination. It's not proven facts. It's not a proven fact. Now, there are two theories, famous theories, Big Bang and the theory of evolution. When they're put together, and there are certain other explanations. Uh, some atheists, they feel that we have come up with an alternative explanation. Uh, God was needed, they say, because we could not explain how this world came about. And now that we know that it all started from Big Bang, so there is an explanation. Um, then obviously there were explanations that were needed for uh, rainfall, for earthquakes, for lightning, and people were scared and they wanted to seek refuge, protection in gods. Uh, there used to be diseases, there would be famine, and so on, catastrophes. Everything can be explained now. We know why an earthquake takes place and so on. And finally, we know now how gradually spread over a very long period of time, humans have come about to be what they are now in their appearance as well as in the intellectual, moral endowments. They've come about to be what they are after having gone through a very long process of evolution. So, based on the Big Bang theory and the theory of evolution, there are many people who feel comfortable that, finally humanity has been able to overcome the ignorance of religion, the, the burden of God, and now we are free and we know who we are and we can explain it. Uh, Obviously, it's a long debate. There are many people who are involved in it. I just mention one problem in this explanation, and maybe later, if we find time, we'll talk more about it. The problem with this explanation is that this entire explanation is answering the question how? How did we come about? And how do things happen? Honestly, religion is, if at all, is concerned with this question, it's really at a very uh, secondary level. The important question is who? Who is doing it? Whether Big Bang or some other reason, whether evolution or some other explanation. Who did it? You know what the answer is? Well, actually, one answer is actually allow me to say so dumb that you can't even imagine that somebody can come up with it. One answer is nobody. Well, obviously, this is no answer. I mean, it can't be an answer. So, I mean, because this is no answer, the other answer is that there is something inbuilt within this existence that causes it to happen. You know, it's all happening like self-operating automatic, machines. But obviously, all those machines are made by somebody. So that's what the problem is. It is not addressing the question who, it's actually focusing on the question how. And therefore, it is no explanation. Somebody rightly remarked that those who are atheists, they also believe in a God. But their God is this entire existence. Within this existence, they are trying to find or associate with this existence attributes which we attribute to God. We think that they are in God. But if you don't believe in God or you don't want to believe in God, those attributes are manifesting themselves. So you'll have to come up with some other explanation. I'll talk more about it in the next session, inshallah. Um, but I have two things to talk about regarding this whole question of belief in God. One is that why is it that people don't believe in God? I mean, why? Because atheism is basically a reaction uh, to the traditional religion. Um, so that's one question that I'm going to try to address. And the second question that I'll address is again raised by many people, atheists and non-atheists. Is it really important? I mean, man, live your life properly. Let's have a good life. Let's be good to each other. Let's try to improve the quality of life of our own selves and of those around us. And let's not worry about this unnecessary question of God, which, according to this understanding, after all, is is the creation of your own imagination and nothing else. That's it. So I stop here, and I'll continue with the last two questions and the response to those questions in the next session. And we'll continue reading the subsequent verses of Surah Al-Baqarah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم.